Wire strippers like these can do a ton. Obviously, they can strip wire like this, but there are a ton of other capabilities that are kind of hidden or at least misunderstood. And if you're not aware of those, you're probably working a lot harder than you have to. So let me break down this tool for you and show you exactly what it can really do. Have you ever wondered why sometimes your wire gets all nicked up? It's probably because you're not using this feature of your wire strippers. And that is actually just the main wire stripper itself, which is these holes. But if you look closely, you'll see there's actually two sets of numbers here on the wire strippers. One side over here is for solid wire. On the other side is for stranded wire. So if you're ever trying to strip a stranded wire, like this one, and you use the number that's on the left side, you're using the wrong size. And because of that, you're actually gonna at least nick, if not cut, a bunch of the little tiny wires inside of the strand. So make sure you're using the number on the stranded side. You can see the difference. Here it says solid, and on the other side it actually says stranded. Sometimes you'll see STR for stranded. It's that simple, just use the right side. But the actual wire stripping, that's just the beginning of what this tool can do. Let's start here with the tip and we'll work our way down. Right here on the tip is actually like a little needle nose plier. Now it's not the best plier in the world. As you can see, it's kind of small. So for some tasks like trying to twist a couple of thick gauge wires together, it's just not gonna be very effective. For that, I would usually just take a pair of lineman's pliers like this, where I can grab both with that tip, and then I can just twist them together. But still, these pliers can come in really handy. The little teeth on them give you good control. They can do a great job of breaking these little tabs off of the outlets and light switches if you ever need to do that. For that, I'll just grip the pliers right next to the score mark, and that breaks right off. Now, there are wire strippers that have way better pliers built in, like these ones here. You can see they basically have their lineman pliers here on the end, and they're gonna be great if you're gonna need that kind of work. For most everything I've done residential, this kind of wire stripper is gonna do a great job. These ones are from Southwire, but you can get comparable ones from Klein or any number of other brands. This one's also from Klein. I'll put links to the ones I specifically use. I'll put those in the description of this video. But I really like these because of some of the other features, which we'll talk about a little bit later. With this bigger plier, you can see it's also really easy just to grip and break off the tabs like so. Now, just below the pliers, there's this weird little kind of hole right there. See what I'm talking about? That's actually has a purpose. It's kind of a wire grip. You can see, for instance, I started to strip this wire, but it's not coming off very easily. I can easily kind of grip on there without pinching down all the way, or I can even grip kind of onto the wire next to it and use that to push it off pretty easily. Well, more easily than other ways. There we go, and it's gone. You can also use it for some crimping, although there's better tools on here for crimping, but it does kind of work for insulation specific crimping. I have another spot for that on this tool. Really, it's just kind of a soft spot to be able to grip down on, especially like the wire sheathing, without actually crimping down all the way onto the wire. Now, when using the wire stripper function, we want to be careful. Oftentimes, like I'll clamp down, I'll get it in the right hole, I'll clamp down on it and give it a little twist like that. There we go. And then it comes right off. If you use the right size hole, better to start too big than too small. If you go too small, then you're gonna nick it. But like I was showing, if I go to the right size, so that's because I was using the wrong side. It's a 12 gauge wire, but it's a solid wire, and I was looking at the number for stranded, like I just told you. All right, here we go. I give it a little twist here, and then I pull straight off. If you rock it back and forth, you're gonna nick that up all over the place. By rocking back and forth, what I mean is like doing that. Now I got little nicks all over my wire. That actually leads me to the next feature of this tool, which is the hook holes. So I'm actually gonna take off just a little bit more. There we go. That might be a little too much, but I want about a ½ inch or so. Then what I'm going to do is I'm gonna stick the wire into one of these holes here, just so that it barely comes out the other side. And then I wrap it around like that and end up with a very nice looking hook. Now, a lot of people will try to do this with the tips of the pliers because they don't know any better. And you can kind of do it, but it's hard to make as pretty of a hook. And then you're trying to shape it and stuff. It just doesn't turn out quite as nice. And it takes more effort. You want to impress an electrician? Go ahead and put a hook in your wire in a couple of seconds. They're gonna know you know what you're doing. Now, what is this hook for? This hook is for connecting to like an outlet terminal. So we've got these little screws, and now I can hook that on there, and then I can tighten this screw down. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the hook is going in the direction so that as I tighten this down clockwise, it's going to tighten the hook. Does that make sense? If I go this way, then as I go clockwise, it's going to want to pull the end of the hook out like this. And so that hook will actually get looser on the screw. So always connect it so that the hook is hooking clockwise. Okay, I'm going to move down to the bottom, and then we'll come back to this other cool tool right here. Down here at the bottom, we got, on mine, I've got a bunch of different options for crimping. Crimping, basically it's when you're going to need to connect a little terminal. So this is a little connector piece. Basically, I can put a wire into here, and then I crimp that down, and now I have this connection piece that I can use to connect to various things. There's a spade end that goes into here, so I can just connect two wires together. So here's how this works. I'm gonna slide the wire in. Sorry, that was the wrong size. I'm gonna go with a blue one. Blue's the right size for my 12 gauge wire. Use the right size. Always use the right size terminals for the wire that you're using. Probably best to check before making a video showing it. All right, here we go. I just slide that in, and notice I got the length just right. You can tell because the copper wire is just sticking out when I pushed it all the way in, but I don't have extra copper sticking out on the other end. Once that's there, I can use one of the crimp tools on here. Now I actually have several. I have one here. This is for insulated and non-insulated. The top one is 16 to 10. This is 12, so I'll use that one. The other is for 22 to 18 gauge wire. So I'm going to use this one. Now, if you notice here, on this side, there's a little slit. On the other side, there's not. I want the point of this crimper to go to the side without the slit. Okay? So then, oops. And then I'll come down just a little bit below. So I'm not right on the end there, I'm just a little bit in. And then I'm gonna crimp down real hard. Now, this does take a bit of strength. And when I'm done, we'll give that a good tug. It's not coming out, so I know I have a good solid connection. And now I have a terminal on the end of my wire. Now we'll work our way back up to a couple of other cool tools. One of them you've seen me use a couple of times already, and that is the wire cutter. The wire cutter is just this sharp portion here. Now, it's got some benefits over using like side cutters, something like this, or the cutter similar on a needle nose plier. It is definitely much sharper. It's gonna do a better job of cutting this wire than either of these other tools will. But because it's sharper, it's also easier to dull it if you try to cut things it's not meant to cut. This is meant for cutting copper only. In fact, on mine, it actually says right on it, cut copper only. Don't try to cut other stuff. You just put it in there, you just cut, and it cuts really, really, really well. But if you try to cut steel wire, even aluminum wire, it's gonna dull it really fast, and then your tool will not be nearly as useful. Now, speaking of cutting, a lot of people aren't aware that their wire stripper cutter has another cutting tool on it. It's a tool for cutting little bolts. These little bolts are like the bolts that come like in an outlet or a switch. They're bolts that are used to essentially attach things to electrical boxes. Now, sometimes these bolts come and they're really long, and they're too long for the box that you're attaching them to, and you need to cut them shorter. Well, these have a built-in tool for that. Here on mine, I actually have 6 different sizes of holes. A lot of wire cutters and wire strippers will have just 2. In fact, this other Klein one that I have has just 2. And that's okay. These are just the super common sizes, 632 and 832. This little screw that came with my outlet here is a 632. And so all I do is stick it in that 632 hole and I thread it in. Now, some of these don't actually have threads. It's just a hole that's the right size. And then I make sure the hole's lined up so I can actually stick it through. And if I just keep screwing, usually, yeah, I should be able to do it by hand. See, I can just put it all the way through there. If you need to use a screwdriver, you should use the right kind. Phillips will work, but it's actually not made for Phillips. They should use the square head. But I get that in until it's to the length I want it. I want to cut that a little shorter, right? And then it's got a really nice cutter built in. Watch this. And now I just cut that shorter. Now, here's the other really cool thing. As I unscrew this, you'll probably want a screwdriver for this part. As I unscrew it, it acts as a die. It actually rethreads the end. So if I nicked up the threads a little bit in my cutting, it fixes the threads as I pull it back out. That way it'll screw back into the box when I need to put it back in the box. It's pretty awesome. Now I've got another bonus tool or a bonus feature that this kind of wire stripper doesn't have. A lot of these don't have them, but these ones, these bigger ones, do. And that is here on the end. You'll notice that the pliers, I've got some lineman pliers, and you'll notice that the edges here are kind of beveled. Right? They're a little bit rounded. On this one, they're not. They're left pretty square. They're actually left kind of sharp. That's actually on purpose. That's so that if I cut some metal conduit, then I can ream it out. Now, the reason you'd want to do that is because when you cut this conduit and then it gets kind of this jagged edge in there, then later when I pull wire through it, I'm going to be like actually shaving off some of the protective coating of the wiring, and that's not going to be very safe. So then I can take my pliers and I can just ream it like that and nicely clean up that edge there. So all the things we talked about today can be done with this simple, again, this version of the wire stripper is fantastic for basically all the residential use that I've ever done. But this one also has the majority of the features that we talked about today, especially the most important ones. It's got the cutter built in, and this is actually a pretty durable one. It's got the stripper, and this one actually goes up to larger size wires. I have to use this tool whenever I'm cutting this heavier gauge wire. It's got the pliers, but it's got the full lineman pliers on it. It's also got a crimper down here on the end, and it's got the bolt shears rethreader. Neither tool can do everything that the other one can do, and that's the thing with all of these kind of multi-tool wire stripper tools that are out there. Every one of them kind of has an area of focus where it's a great tool for certain types of work, but none of them that I've come across just does everything. So again, for the majority of the work and the projects I've done, something like this is going to work really well. But if I'm needing to do something more heavy duty, if I'm needing to work with this heavier gauge wire, this is what I like to carry around. And I'll just usually have one or the other with me on a job. So now you got the wire stripper down, you know how to strip wire right, and you know all the other cool things you can do with that amazing tool. Now we want to make sure that we're doing our electrical work correctly and that we're doing it safely. And for that, let me show you 7 really common mistakes that people make that can be fatal when working with their breaker panel. Go check out that video here. Stay safe. We'll see you next time here on Fixter.